and do everything in its power to make certain that Hagerstown is and will remain a welcoming city opposed to acts of racism and bigotry. Signed and sealed on this 9th day of June 2020 by myself and every member of the council. This will be hung in every department in the city of Hagerstown. All right, can I get a motion to go into the 102nd special session, please?
So moved, Mr. Mayor.
Second.
We're going to give that to Alston. Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
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 Sounds like almost everybody, so we're going to move forward. A motion, the approval of a supplemental agreement with the Maryland Department of Transportation.
Mr. Mayor, I hereby move to approve a supplemental agreement between the City of Hagerstown and Maryland Department of Transportation. This agreement sets forth terms and conditions for improvements to the Virginia Avenue CSX Railroad crossing. The city's portion of the project is the replacement of the local storm drain system. All funding will be from MDOT. I further authorize staff to enter into an engineering agreement with CSX Railroad for them to review and approve the city's storm drain plans.
Second.
Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
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 Motion carries 5-0. Next up, the approval of a motion to update drawings that were approved with ordinances 0-20-08 through 0-20-14.
Mr. Mayor, I hereby move that the mayor and council approve this motion to amend and update the drawings attached to the quitclaim deeds approved by mayor and council in ordinance number O-20-08 through O-20-14 on April 28th, 2020. The original drawings attached to the quitclaim adopted in ordinance numbers O-20-08 and O-20-14 did not contain labels on each of the property boundaries. The updated drawings do not reflect a change to any boundary lines themselves, but contain non-substantive amendments to label each of the boundary lines.
Second.
Second by Alston. Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Shelley's an aye. Alston's an aye. Kristen, Emily, Lou. Okay, 5. Thank you very much. We'll move out of the 102nd session. I do have another proclamation, and this proclamation is for Flag Day, which is June 14th of every year. It reads, Proclamation Flag Day 2020. Whereas people across the United States celebrate Flag Day on June 14th each year. And whereas Flag Day is a day when Americans celebrate the meaning of the nation's flag, honoring the traditions associated with its care, and educate those around them to its significance. And whereas on June 14th, 1777, the flag resolution was signed making the current Stars and Stripes a national flag of the United States of America. On May 30th, 1916, President Woodrow Wilson called for the nationwide observance of Flag Day. And whereas on August 3rd, 1949, President Harry S. Truman signed an act of Congress designating June 14th of each year as National Flag Day. He also requested that the president issue an annual proclamation calling for its observance for the display of the flag of the United States on all federal government buildings. And whereas the city of Hagerstown, Maryland, encourages citizens to observe with pride all ceremonies from Flag Day through Independence Day as a time to honor America, celebrate our rights and freedoms, and to publicly recite the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and signed by me. All right, into the work session, we have an update, COVID-19 update from our fantastic city administrator, Scott Wilson.
Thank you, Mayor. Three things today. Have met with the management team over the last several weeks, and finished that up with a meeting at the EOC on Friday to discuss staff return to work and city facilities reopening. An email went out today to all staff with the phased-in plan to do just that. That will be as follows. On June 22nd, all staff that are remote working from home will return to the office to work. Anybody that creates a hardship for, whether it be care of a sick loved one, child care, that kind of thing, will need to work through human resources and work to get permission to do that. On June 29th, the first floor of City Hall only will reopen to the public. There will be no access to any of the upper floors of City Hall without an appointment, and that will include the public restroom. And then on July 13th, all city facilities will reopen to the public. That includes all of our outbuildings, as well as the upper floors of City Hall. All public will be required to wear a mask when entering the building. We'll also be restricting the number of people that are on the first floor at any one time, depending on what the governor's limits are at that time, because we expect there to be a good flow of folks through the lobby at that time. We'll provide hand sanitizer and other PPEs throughout the first floor, not only for staff, but also for the public when they come in. And we will maintain hours of operation from 8 a.m. to 4 p.m. in the lobby. The city, over the last several months, has taken great lengths to put safeguards in place to protect our staff and protect our customers and citizens when the buildings are reopened. From plexiglass between staff and customers for face-to-face interactions, to the availability of hand sanitizer and other PPE materials, to encouraging and promoting social distancing for those continuing to come to work. We have done this while also maintaining all the services provided to our citizens as they were allowed to be continued by the state. The vigilance and commitment to these guidelines by our staff has put us in this position to begin to reopen our buildings. As we have done throughout this pandemic, we will adjust our plans moving forward if we have to. But for now, that will be the schedule for returning to work and to reopen. Secondly, I'd like to propose to the Mayor and Council the closure of South Potomac Street this Saturday from 3 o'clock in the afternoon until 9 o'clock. This would be South Potomac Street from the square to Antietam. This will allow restaurants to be able to put tables into the street within a designated area, which would also allow for emergency access into that area, not by a fire truck, but should there be an issue that we need medical staff or something to come onto that street. Restaurants that would participate will follow the same guidelines for this sitting, the seating that are being followed for their normal outside dining. This just allows them to put some additional spaces out into the street. We will have that. If y'all are okay with that, we'll go ahead and get that announcement out. I've already pre-warned some of the restaurants that this was going to be a topic today of my part of this, and getting a favorable response, and hopefully that will generate some more table space at that time. Lastly, Potterfield Pool, we found out today, should be open by early next week. Capacity is going to be limited to 150, which is still well under the guidelines that the health department has put out, but it's a number that we feel can be managed at this point. And of course, that will also be up for reevaluation potentially at some point in the summer. And the sliding board and splash pad will not be available now. The diving board is fine, but splash pad and sliding board will not be used during, at least at the opening. That, unless you have questions for me on any of that, is it for me.
Scott, what does Hannah Thai and or the Gourmet Goat think of? Have you consulted them with that closure? Does that affect them? It does, but are they okay with it?
Yeah, I haven't heard back from them. I know that the Gourmet Goat put seating outside on the sidewalk, and I think they're planning to put some more out there on the sidewalk. They're in a pretty nice situation. They can put really as many tables as they want out there on the sidewalk. I have not heard from Hannah Thai. Didn't hear from them the first time, and I did not hear this time. They also have the same opportunity, though, to put tables and chairs on the sidewalk.
And they got a pretty big area behind it also.
Okay. Well, and
Question,
I hope that, you know, those, sorry, it's a lag. I apologize. I hope that people, you know, restaurants like the Cannon Coffee and the Rhubarb House and even the Plum, that they know that we're going to be doing this. And even though it's not their typical hours, but to be able to promote themselves and to be able to, you know, utilize this exciting opportunity. I think that I hope that we can reach out to them if we haven't already to let them know that this is going to be happening.
All of the restaurants within a 2 square block area of public square have been notified of what we're planning to do.
yeah, anyway, I'm just wondering how we're going to enforce social distancing in the pool. And do you have any idea how that's going to work?
Well, we're going to rely on the lifeguards primarily to do it. I think it's going to be difficult, like we're finding in many different places. But we're going to try, I believe, through the lifeguards for them to do the best they can. But it's going to be difficult.
Right, the lifeguards, and that's why they only allow about 1/3 capacity, so that there's theoretically plenty of room for everybody to enjoy the pool.
I'm sorry, Rodney, I didn't see you there. Sorry.
He was hiding. Okay, so hopefully we'll get some good news out of the governor's office tomorrow. After all, it is Wednesday. Maybe he'll come out and at some point in the morning announce that he's going to have a press conference at 4 or 5 o'clock. But I'm just and Emily, you had mentioned about the county commissioners meeting today. I'm just wondering, was that kind of like the direction of where they were going? Was this scolding because of that, or of opening faster or slower, or what was it? Because I didn't get a chance to see it.
Senator Serafini was making it clear that it is up to the commissioners to take control of this situation.
As it should be, correct. I wasn't with that. Me and Andy on the same page. Who'd thunk it? All right. So anything else, Scott?
We'll just make sure we get this out on social media, and we'll do a press release also to make sure everybody knows that we're going to be doing this as well, like we always do.
Okay, thank you. Any questions for Scott from council? All right, cool. All right, moving on then. Stormwater utility implementation. Jim Bender, I saw you hiding in there in the Burhange room.
Well, I'll just start out just as an introduction, and Jim's going to walk through these different points. But as you all know, we were planning on implementing the stormwater program that we've worked on for several years. We were planning on starting that in July. Obviously, that's all been derailed. But just to remind you all that back in April, we did have you pass the Stormwater Ordinance, Chapter 213. So everything's in place there as far as setting up the utility fee. We also passed the ordinance that the curb and sidewalks are no longer the responsibility of the adjoining property owners, but are now the city's responsibility. So with those two things passed, there's a few things here that we need to finalize to implement the program. So we wanted to find out tonight what you're comfortable with as far as, most importantly, the start time and setting the fee. And then we'll go from there. There's the timing of the stormwater program affects many things. For example, we pave the streets after the curbs are fixed. We can't fix the curbs until we have the funds in place to do that. So we need to know what that timeline is, and hopefully we can go through these 5 items here and get some feedback from you on each of them. So with that, I'll turn it over to Jim.
So as Robbie said, we developed a whole program with the thought that we would be starting on July 1st. And that's how the financial model for the program was set up. We are continuing to work on developing the master account file or the billing file that we'll use to actually start billing. We're still refining our impervious area data to make sure it's as accurate as can be before we actually start sending out bills. We also had prepared an insert that we were going to put in the utility bills, basically just information or a heads up to residents and property owners that the utility fee was going to start being charged at some point. That insert hasn't been sent out because we're obviously sort of delaying right now, not knowing exactly what the council is thinking as far as a start date. We will need a little bit of time once that decision is made to get those inserts out and to finalize the billing file and really get ready. But I guess we would look for some guidance from the council on what you're thinking as far as an actual start date for the fee now, just given the current situation. And we tossed around a number of different possibilities. I guess what we would recommend is either an October 1st start date this fall, or possibly a January 1st, 2021 start date. But at some point we do need some direction, or we do need to know what the start date is so that we can target getting all this background stuff ready to go.
What is the financial impact if we don't start until January 1? Is there a budget impact that was already planned for this year?
Well, yes, but I think what we'd have to do is just be judicious in what we spend money on. I don't think we would actually start implementing the program, such as planting trees, some of the stormwater projects that we have in the pipeline, no pun intended. And then I think we would just delay some of those things.
I think January. Oh, go ahead, Michelle.
Sorry, I was just going to add to that. You know, we talk about financial impact, and Rodney stating the most obvious, but one of the other things would be financial and the budget impact. If we moved forward prior to January 1, we're going to spend a lot of staffing time and resources hurrying to get this stuff billed before cutoff season can even occur. So all we're doing is accumulating additional outstanding balances before we can get some of the old accounts rectified, which means it's going to be more time consuming for staff on the tail end once the bills go out, because then we're going to have to make additional payment arrangements, as well as, you know, something comes back and we have to delay it again. The other good thing about that is, you know, the general fund is going to have to also pay for stormwater as well as the golf course. So we'll have a half a year charge instead of a whole year charge.
Would it be unrealistic to evaluate in smaller increments rather than saying January is the start date? I mean, could we evaluate it on a monthly basis and just see where we are? I think all of us are really just kind of shooting into we just have no idea. So, I mean, can we evaluate in a smaller time frame, kind of like what Scott was saying earlier about?
We could certainly do that. One of the reminders would be that this will be added to the water and wastewater bill, so they're already on a quarterly basis. So we were looking at a clean start, if you would, either the start of a quarter or the end of a quarter. That's why we have October and January. But yes, we could do that, Shelley.
It would be most helpful right now, I think we can all safely say that we're not going to start at July 1st. And knowing that, we could revisit this later, or if you wanted to pass a resolution to start it at a time like October 1st or January 1st, either one's fine.
Yeah, I'm good with January 1st myself.
I'm good with January 1st as well.
Yeah, I think January 1st is a clean break off start point. And we would not, I assume we would not be entertaining any sidewalk repair activities until we begin the funding in January.
Yes, I think that's correct. I think we would wait.
Anybody?
Okay.
I have no problem. Worry.
Okay. Kristen? Was that you?
That was Lou. I'm good with it.
Okay. All right then. Sounds like January 1. Thank you, Jim.
Thank you. Next item in the memo is just to remind you that the financial model was based on a fee per billing unit of $32. So that's $32 per 1,000 square feet of impervious area annually. That's what everything was built upon, but until that resolution is passed, that really hasn't been set in stone. So if the council did feel some reason that a different fee should be charged, that's something that could still be entertained. But we did include in the memo just a small chart giving you some sample properties of different sizes, different types of uses, just to give you an idea of what if we stick with $32, what that fee would look like on an annual basis and a monthly basis. So again, that final decision can wait until the resolution is acted upon, but just want to remind you that that's something that will have to be set at some point by resolution. The third point is, as Rodney said, with the changes in the sidewalk program going from being a property owner responsibility to the city taking it over, a couple things need to happen. One is there are existing sidewalk notices that were mailed out in some in 2018, well, most of them in 2018, some in 2019, that are still active. But that work, we've tried to inform anybody that got one of those notices that they should hold off and wait until the ordinances are passed to make sure that the city was going to be taking over those responsibilities. Now with the passage of that ordinance, we want to go ahead and rescind the notices that are still outstanding out there so that it's clear and it's official that those property owners don't need to do that work. And based upon what we've calculated, there were some property owners that actually went ahead and did their sidewalk work before we talked about cutting this off. There has been talk about reimbursing those property owners that did the work in calendar year 2019. And we went through and did some estimates of how much that reimbursement would cost. And it looks like that could be as much as $30,000 to $35,000 in reimbursement that the property owners would be eligible for. I guess we just wanted to make the council aware of that and see if that is still the direction that we want to offer those reimbursements.
I think that's only fair.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's, we talked about it before, and I think people are counting on that happening already. And then the ones that had loans outstanding too, I think we, you know, if they're current on their loans, then we would refund what they paid toward that loan and wipe the slate clean on the remainder of the balance of their loan.
I'm fine with it.
I'm fine with it.
Okay. Um, Yeah, and just, as the memo says, that will make us current. And then moving into the next fiscal year, once we start charging the stormwater fee, the curb repairs going forward will be paid for out of the stormwater fee. And the sidewalk work is going to be paid out of the general fund. And we, in the 2021 fiscal budget, we did adjust those CIPs to account for that additional sidewalk work that they'll be the city's responsibility. So that's already built into the budget. Another thing related to sidewalks is with the city taking over responsibility for sidewalk repairs, we had to go through and look at our policy that we use in the department to determine when sidewalks should be repaired or replaced. Because the way it was written before, it was set up for the property owners. Now, knowing that we've got, city's got the responsibility, over the whole city to do this, we took a look at some of the criteria in there and tried to come up with some changes that seemed reasonable and seemed workable for us going forward. And we've attached a copy of the draft policy for your review. Don't really need any action on that at this point, but if you see anything in that policy that you have questions about or concerns, please share them with us. We still have time to make adjustments on that as well. The other attachment that's in your packet is the credit policy that goes along with the stormwater utility fee. In Maryland, by law, if you're going to charge a stormwater fee, you also have to provide a means that property owners can qualify for credits to reduce their stormwater bill. So our consultants would help us to prepare this policy, which lays out, who is eligible for credits, how they are going to be calculated. It includes some application forms so that it sort of leads them through the process. And it also talks about sort of different criteria of credits. Some are credits, some are incentives to get private property owners to put in new stormwater management facilities on their own or in partnership with the city. So again, that credit policy is there for your review. It's draft. It can also be adjusted if necessary, but we spent a good bit of time with the consultant and with the Stormwater Advisory Committee trying to work through the nuances of that. And we think that what we have here is a pretty workable credit policy. And then the last point is not directly related to the stormwater utility program, but it's related to the city's stormwater permit. One of the new requirements from MDE when we got our new permit is they want us to pass an ordinance that expands or I guess clarifies the city's ability to track down illegal discharges into our stormwater system. So that could be someone dumping used motor oil into a storm drain or antifreeze or any number of things. A lot of the regulations that they want to see in that ordinance, we already have at different places in the city code, but MDE really wants all these municipalities to have a standalone single ordinance that specifically talks about these illicit discharges. So we are working with the city attorney on drafting that ordinance. And I think that it's going to be ready for introduction at the in July, at the July regular session. So I just want to make you aware of that.
So if you're okay with the start date of January 1st, the fee that's proposed and the policies, I'll put these together for voting on later. And that'll set the course for us for implementing all this.
Okay, everybody okay?
I'm good. I'm good.
I'm good.
All right, thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anybody seen Kathy? Okay. I must call her unawares.
Good afternoon.
Hello.
We are back with the discussion of recommended revisions to the city's medium-range growth boundary, which is an aspect of our comprehensive plan in terms of planning for water and wastewater service and a planning for annexation. Really, it's the boundaries for our annexation and the boundaries for water and wastewater service. We're here today because both the city and the county planning commissions have recommended approval of a proposed modification to the MRGA boundaries. What we need coming out of today is a consensus to move forward and amend the comprehensive plan to implement this proposal. And also, we're recommending, if there is consensus to move forward that, because of the amount of time involved, which I'll get into later, we're recommending that we put the 2 Greencastle Pike water requests back up for action under the water and wastewater policy economic development exception, since they are in the areas proposed to be added. So, give you a little background why we went into this exercise of looking at the MRGA boundaries. Mayor and council were reviewing about 5 water requests last spring outside the MRGA. Based on the economic development priorities of the county, that was the exception that we're seeking in our water and wastewater policy for service outside the MRGA. And given that it's intended to be an exception, not a normal rule of practice with these exceptions, there was some frustration that it was seeming like it was going to be a normal practice to just keep going outside the MRGA, whereas we hadn't planned for all of that. So they suggested that the MRGA boundaries be revisited last spring because of these water requests. And we approved the 3 out at the airport because they're in the county's economic development target area, but the direction was no further economic development approvals outside these target areas until the MRGA boundary issue and priorities was addressed. So city and county planning, water, wastewater, and economic development staff met several times over a period of about 10 months, all the way up until earlier this year, to review capacity constraints for the city plants, the extent of raw land in the MRGA, which is pretty sizable, county priorities for economic development, and then the existing pre-annexation agreements that we have in the MRGA that have not been implemented yet or outside the MRGA, because we were, the MRGA was only created in 2008, and yet we were collecting pre-annexation agreements since 2002. So we have some that are beyond the MRGA boundaries. So, but throughout all these discussions, it was understood by all parties involved in these conversations that if areas were going to be added to the MRGA, then other areas would need to be removed so that the capacity demands from raw land balanced, so that it would be consistent with the planning that was in the comprehensive plan for this is the area we think we can serve over a 20-year period. So everyone understood that, which was very helpful. So we created, between city and county staff, a lot of various proposals of what could be added, but mainly a lot of concern about which should be added to be consistent with the county's goals for economic development. And then the next step was which ones to remove. And so the map that's in the packet, and I wish I knew how to turn it on, but I don't, shows you what is proposed. The green areas are what are proposed to be removed, and what's helpful or what's proposed to be added that's helpful is it's all on the county wastewater side of the city. So to be served by county wastewater plant, except up in the airport, but that would be through further future flow transfer agreements. Anything that helps out the city wastewater plant is always helpful. And then the red is what's proposed to be removed to do that balancing that I talked about. And those are all on the east and south side of the city and city wastewater plant service areas. So removing those areas really helps the city's wastewater plant capacity constraints. So using the land yield formula for raw land, trying to figure out what, if it developed on average, what would be the amount of water and wastewater demand from that raw land being developed. What we've come up with is that what's being proposed to be added and removed, not only, sure. Eric is going to put the map up. I'm technologically challenged, as everyone knows. Thank you.
Then you can
Yep,
scroll
that
down.
much I can handle. Yep. It's just getting it on there. All right. So you can see up by the airport, this is an area that's proposed to be added. A lot of raw land up here. This is some, and that's non-residentially zoned. This is some residentially zoned land proposed to be added below Morgansville. That's in the area of the new Morgansville pump station that's being constructed. That would go through this area actually. And then green areas over here near 40 and the Greencastle Pike proposed to be added. This is again, economic development area that the county has a priority for. This land here is actually one of the requests for service that were kind of tabled last spring. And then we have more green area on the west side of Greencastle Pike below the National Pike. This is the county's enterprise zone, and there's still some land left in here. This is the remainder of this parcel that was added to the MRGA when we last did the comp plan, but this, for whatever reason, they didn't ask for this, which is the last of that lot, but we're proposing that would go in. And then this land down here in the Elliott Parkway kind of area to be added in. And so all of this is non-residentially zoned land. And to balance the demand for what this raw land would create, what's being proposed to be removed, oh boy. Oh, yeah, I'll check that out. All right, below Funkstown, this red area, proposing to remove this residentially zoned land and consider that to be part of the Funkstown growth area. I've had some conversations with the mayor down there about, you know, what are your growth plans? And it seemed like it would be a rational thing to expect if land right by the town were to develop, it should go into the town. We've also since found out that all of this developed land over here on the east side of Funkstown that's shown as white on the map is already served by Funkstown. So when we actually move forward, if we do this, we would actually propose adding that as a Funkstown growth area too, although they're already developed, so annexation would be a challenge. But there's certainly, we're not going to annex it if it's already being served by the town. Other areas proposed to be removed are below 70 over here on the north or east side of US 40. There are no utilities below 70 in this area, so it would be a pretty monumental task to get this served. So it seems like it would not be a big hardship for these property owners to no longer be in the MRGA. And this is land on a very rural, would have to be substantially upgraded road in order to develop. And so that's proposed to be removed. Also, this is residentially zoned, this is non-residentially zoned. And then up here, up in the north of Jefferson, Fiddlersburg kind of area near the concrete plant, that's residentially zoned raw land that there's no utilities over in here. And so it would be a significant task as well to get utilities into these areas to develop. And plus you're right beside the concrete plant, which creates its own challenges. So it didn't seem like this was going to create a lot of heartburn if it came out of the MRGA. But given that it's residentially zoned, it has a very high land yield in terms of if it did develop, how many units could be out there that would need to be served by water and wastewater. And then up here, this is some raw land up at the top, also proposed to come out. Again, this is, if this were to be served, it would be part of a joint service area. So it would be county pipes, but coming to the city wastewater plant. So having it not in the area to be served helps our wastewater plant. So this is what was proposed. Actually, it was mapped by the county staff. We had done a lot of analysis of where's all the raw land. Is any of this raw land at the edges, how much of a priority it is. So this is what the county staff suggested as the removal, the residential, mostly residentially zoned land to remove to balance, make me dizzy, to balance the green areas that are proposed to be added. So that's what's before us. With the land use formula in the comp plan, with all of that being removed, the red being removed, there's actually a pretty big surplus in terms of extra, like if you wanted to add more green, you could, because it's, right now, it's way on the green side in terms of, or I guess not way on the, anyway, there's room. Yeah, to the benefit of the city. And so if there remains a very large surplus, the county planning staff would like to revisit this map to add a little more land up in this planned industrial area. That's their future, sort of when this fills up, this is their plan to go further. And so they would like to entertain adding in here. I'm a little hesitant to jump right on that because if you if you create more, possibly more realistic land yield formula based on how land actually develops out in the county, it doesn't develop very densely, then the red number would come down significantly, and then it would still be a benefit to the city in terms of how it's balancing, but it would be much closer. So I don't really want to say, okay, let's add more green right now until we've looked at it more closely with the planning commission as well. So that's what's been proposed. And so now, if there's consensus, the mayor and council thinks that this is reasonable as the county planning commission, the city planning commission have determined, then staff would get together with the planning commission to update the comprehensive plan, update the data and the water resource element, which is going to take us a little bit of time, develop an amendment package to the city's comprehensive plan, starting public review perhaps in the late summer, early fall, and then the earliest adoption would be in early 2021. So it's going to take quite a bit of time if the council agrees this is a path we should be moving down. So that's why staff's suggesting we bring back off the table from March, April, whenever that. Actually, we received them in March and April, and I think they got tabled around June. Put them back on the table for consideration since they're in this area that's proposed. The over in this area and over in this area. So they're proposed to be added to the MRGA. So that is staff's proposal. Jill will be touching on more detail on those water requests after we wrap up this comprehensive plan discussion.
Anybody want to chime in from council?
I do. So when I look at the map for removal, just want to go back to a couple of the areas indicated, which appear to be in the Funkstown area. Is that correct?
Yes, 1 and 2.
Yeah, so by removing those areas, how does that impact us?
There is room under Funkstown's water permit with us, definitely to serve number 1, which is actually a lot of that has already been annexed into the town. It's just the part basically on the west or south side of 40 that's not already in the town. And then number 2, there's a couple of houses out there, but sitting on very large parcels. So it all depends on how it develops. Like Lyles is not proposing a very dense development over there on number 1. So there may still be even room left over after he's done under their existing permit to accommodate more development.
Right, it just seems like they're saying, yeah, we're going to take this out, but you're going to serve it anyway because you're a wholesale provider to this location.
Yeah, well,
it doesn't seem like there's any real exchange going on. We're still going to end up serving both.
Except we've already accounted for the amount of, even though they're not using all of their permit, we're already planning for them already using all of their permits. So it would help. Because it would stay in that pot rather coming out of the whole MRGA pot. It would be accounted for through the town's permit, which we're already planning on.
Was the objective here to reach a place of neutrality, meaning amount out equals amount in, or was the objective to identify places that remain outside and with purpose and thought in doing so?
There were a number of factors that came into play thinking about what areas should come out. Whether or not they were a high or low priority was one. Whether they generated land yield to balance off what was being proposed to be added. We at least wanted to balance evenly, so it was neutral. It's just turned out because so much of it is residentially zoned land, it's become out of balance, but to the city's benefit. But we also thought about, areas that are annexable to us. We didn't want to pull areas out that we could perhaps easily annex and that we might potentially have a realistic aspect to see development come forward, like up in this area in here. We didn't want to remove land up in here because that's right contiguous to the city here, and we would lose out an opportunity to grow our tax base. So those are the kinds of things we're taking into consideration too is, where do we have pre-annexation agreements? where is it possible we can annex? And then what kind of, and is it an area we think that is unlikely to develop anytime soon because of the challenges of getting infrastructure to where they are? And then just, you know, what's a priority and what's a lower or higher priority?
Was the impetus for the county's approach most directly associated with a designated or defined economic benefit area?
Yes. As you can
This
see,
originally, we said, look, you know, here's, I can see why you would want the airport. Now let's pick a circle around the airport. You know what I mean? And identify it. Let's not keep, you know, piggybacking one parcel on another because it simply happens to be within the vicinity of that other parcel.
was there a question?
Yeah, I guess when I look at this B1 through B5,
Mm-hmm.
you know what I mean? And then you look at these other spots that are just kind of spots. I'm curious because in our initial discussion and concern, it was like, well, you're just asking for anything outside of the MRGA because, you know, it happens to be that person's asking for it at this particular moment, i.e. some arbitrariness of, you know, when the landowner outside of the area we've designated happens to decide versus saying, hey, city, here's a bubble of area that is of direct economic benefit, not an area where we're sitting back waiting for somebody to ask.
Yeah, we were looking at developable parcels at the airport, and this area along Greencastle Pike has always been a priority for the county. We just didn't include it in our MRGA. This whole area here is a planned industrially zoned land where, you know, they are really, they really would like to have large chunks of raw industrial zone land or highway interchange zone land that would allow for a large user like you see up in Creighton Boulevard if they come along. And so that's why they would like to see land added over here. We have a pre-annexation agreement already on most of this where a warehouse is proposed. The reason it was before you last spring is that there's some land here and here that's not a part of it. So they could move forward today with this part. It's just the little parts in the front of it. And then this is an enterprise zone, so clearly it's a priority for the county to be able to get it developed. And one of our tabled items is in this area, right at the bottom of Parkway. And then also down here, there's a lot of industrial kind of development down in this area, which is a priority for the county to allow to see more of it. Like FedEx is down in here, and Elliott Parkway, and then the Taylor Farm, where there's proposal for a very large warehouse. So yeah, the county, initially, when the city staff was asking about priority, we didn't realize that this was a priority area. We knew it was over in this area and over here. And then this became added because of the pump station and the lines going right through here. So it made sense for the county staff to include this as well. And so, yeah, they were definitely thinking about what are our priorities and what's the kind of land that we need to be able to market to prospects.
Well, it looks like you were asked to go to the county, work through with them, you know, squeeze it like a balloon here and push it out to the other side. Looks like that was done. As you pointed out, this one area is a priority funding area. So, you know, I mean, I'm happy with the fact that, you know, we worked together and we accomplished this part. So what's the next steps for us, Kathy?
You want to see if there was consensus in the council that this made sense, that we should move forward to make it a reality, which means updating some data in the plan and putting it out for the public process, not only for that updated data, but to change this boundary, which is a comprehensive plan tool.
Do we have a consensus on the councils to move forward on that? Emily's thumbs up.
Yeah,
Yes.
I'm good. I'm good to go with it.
Yeah,
Oh,
yes.
Lou. Shelley, you disappear.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, all right, sounds good.
Okay, so then the next would be, the part two of this is the next item on the agenda.
Right.
Yep.
Request for exception to city water and wastewater policy.
And so picking up from what Kathy described as the context of the conversation, there are two requests that we have had in front of us for economic development projects that would meet the exception number 6. And because of the timing of the changes to the comprehensive plan, we're requesting that you consider these requests using exception number 6. And I'll walk you through them, and then if you're supportive of them, we would bring them forward for approval at the June regular session. So the first one is Maryland 63 at Business Parkway, and a single parcel number 827. And I'm not sure if the map is still available to be put up, but that was letter A on the map that Kathy was showing. So the proposed project is 2 industrial flex buildings totaling 62,500 square feet, built on speculation with investment of approximately 5 million and the creation of 50 to 60 jobs. And the water request amount for this is 3 EDUs. And I believe Nancy's on with us as well for any questions related to the wastewater capacity request. The second request is Maryland 63 near Route 40. This is a series of parcels. And as Kathy noted, there is exception number 7, which is pre-annexation agreement that applies to one of the parcels, number 393. But the rest of the parcels being requested would accommodate a warehouse distribution center totaling just under 1 million square feet, built on speculation, with investment projected at 55 million and the potential of creating 1,500 jobs with a request of 11 EDUs. I would add comments to this in that we know from what we're experiencing on Vazel Boulevard, the demand for industrial space, for space to be used for warehouse distribution and e-commerce fulfillment. We know even since the pandemic that industry, especially in the area of e-commerce fulfillment, is actually growing well in our region, and growing nationally also because of the style of purchases of online purchases requiring those types of distribution centers. So it doesn't surprise me that requests are now coming forward with a kind of a change in the economy, that buildings are now being built on speculation to be able to accommodate tenants quickly. I'd be happy to answer any questions related to the 2 projects. And if Nancy's on, to have her add anything else related. Oh, I see Nancy, related to the request.
So that would be D1, 2, and 3, correct? The second project.
No, the second project is letter C.
Oh, okay.
Yes, the first project is I believe a portion of A.
Okay. Nancy, got anything to add?
No, I support moving forward with the recommendation.
The process, I'll add additionally that the process requires a letter of support from Washington County. Those letters are in the packet, as well as the original requests that came from the attorney of both clients.
Any comments from council? Good to go then. Thumbs up, thumbs up.
Good.
So
I'm
this will,
good.
I'm sorry.
Emily, Lou. Kristen.
Yeah, I'm good.
Sounds good, Jim.
So we'll bring this forward at the regular session, will be the next time you see it in the form of a motion.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Thank you.
Last but certainly not least is the payment for 911 service.
Mr. Mayor, there's a memo in your packet, and I believe Michelle is still up there in the Burhan's room that she can chime in as well. This relates to the annual payment that has been made to the county for city portion of 911 services resulting from discussions that were had between 2007, 2009, when central dispatching was created and the combined 911 center was made out into the county. This in the past has just been part of a consent agenda approval. However, last year there were some concerns as to the requirement of paying $405,630 to the county for this service. And over the months last year, between I believe it was May and October, there was information in a packet provided to you on the various work session, executive center session, and county commissioner joint meetings where this topic was discussed. At the time of all these discussions, there was certainly back and forth intent, language that said 85% of the cost of city employees that would be moved from our dispatch on Burhan's out to the county dispatch. But at no time was there ever any agreement between the city and the county that specifically laid out the amount of the payment, $405,630, and that it would go in perpetuity to the county for the dispatchers that work on city calls. Many folks have said that there was intent. The intent was there that it was in perpetuity to be paid, but there is no document or agreement that states that fact. So we received the FY20 payment invoice from the county a couple of weeks ago and felt that it was important to bring this back to you before it went on a consent agenda. If you all had any concerns, I will tell you that Michelle and I met with county staff and the former county administrator several times to try to come to some sort of an agreement as to how we could either negotiate some current agreement as to what would be owed, or if anything would be owed, or how that was this payment could be worked into the tax differential, so that it could be accounted for there and not through a regular annual payment. Those discussions were going fairly well, and then the county administrator resigned, and we had a couple meetings with the interim administrator to try to pick up the pieces of that discussion, and the pandemic hit, and this was all pushed aside. So, and understandably. So my stance is this, to take as you want. I don't like the fact that there is not any agreement between the Board of County Commissioners and the City Council, the Mayor and City Council, on the guidelines as to how this payment should be made. I understand the intent, and I understand some of the arguments as to how this all came about. However, there is still much room for interpretation, and if you review the packet that you got back in, I believe, October, still to me a lot of confusion as to what this entire situation is made up on, and that needs to be cleared up in FY21. I believe it would have been done in FY20 if World Events hadn't interceded and we had to look elsewhere. It becomes especially critical in a time when we have very shaky revenue forecasts moving forward, and a $405,000 payment in itself is a significant amount to pay without some sort of an official agreement as to how this was going to work moving forward. So knowing the interest that you all had the last time regarding this, I wanted to at least provide you the opportunity to look at this before you saw it on the consent agenda next week, and give us some direction as to whether it would stay on the consent agenda, whether it needs to be discussed further, or whether it not be paid at all until we can figure another arrangement, if necessary, out. So I'll leave that to you all to discuss.
I think, Scott, my opinion is it should be removed from the consent agenda, and I can't believe that, in hindsight's 2020, I can't believe that it ever went into effect and there was no agreement as to how long the payment would last or what the method of computation of the payment would be going forward into perpetuity. But my opinion is we need to figure out what that's going to be and document it, have a documented payment methodology as to how we compute what the city should pay for the 911 service going forward, and not just continue to pay year after year.
And it's not just the 911 center. I mean, this brings up the bigger picture of our tax differential that we still, after years now, have not gotten clarification on. We don't get credit for this $400,000, and we're the only municipality in Maryland that pays for a 911 center. We don't get credit for our $10 million fire system, and they need our system just as much as we need theirs, and we somehow don't get credit for that. I mean, the services that the city of Hagerstown provide compared to the other municipalities in Washington County, it's extraordinarily different, and we should not be getting the same tax differential as everyone else. It's just not fair. I understand everyone is under budget constraints, but our job is to protect the citizens of Hagerstown's tax dollars, and this is not doing it. So I don't know if we need to set some sort of deadline or what we need to do to make this actually happen and stop being a topic of conversation. But we have to do something to get a fair explanation of where our tax dollars are going.
I think the only way you ever get to a point where people actually sit down to a table and have a real solid discussion and iron out the differences and come up with a resolution is you don't pay the bill.
And that was my intent last year when I tabled it. That was my only intention, was to get everyone at the table, not pay it necessarily, but to figure out, what is fair. And with the turnover of staff at the county, and it's like, here we are a year later in the exact same position we were in.
Right.
And it was kind of unfortunate because I think, and Michelle can pipe in if she wants, I think we were making some substantial progress. I think it was becoming understood about the issues with the tax differential, and then in November, the county administrator resigned, and we were kind of stuck at that point. In Kirk Downey's defense, he did meet with us a couple times, and Sarah Greaves, and we met. We had a couple meetings with the fire chief and the chief of police and emergency services. And we're, again, trying to resurrect, kind of starting from scratch again, bringing it forward. And then the pandemic hit and that stopped. So I think we have a groundwork that we could move forward on with the county on this. I think there is some sort of an understanding as to what our concerns are. I think we made them very clear. Michelle made them very clear. It's just a matter of, as we said last year, this is for, if you want to say services already rendered for FY20, that's what this invoice is for. And then, unless we have an asteroid or something hit next year, which is probably not out of the question, it seems, basically say this will not be paid until we come to some sort of a final agreement, but that's your all's call.
I think that asteroid has actually been scheduled for October, just so you know.
I
Listen,
agree with Natalie and all.
I mean, I wholeheartedly agree that we need to, get off square one here and get some resolution to this. Kristen can speak to it probably even better than I can because he speaks better than I do. But I recall when this all began, and of course the reason why we did it, and it made sense back then. But I don't even think that he, being a county commissioner, believed that it was going to be in perpetuity. But hopefully we can, get some resolution, get some talking, and I truly believe that can be handled at the staff level, and we just try to keep politics out of it and let staff make sense out of this in fiscal sense that protects both entities. So, oh yeah, and don't pay it. Yeah, I'm with you guys. Okay.
Yeah. I agree. Let staff meet and work through it to resolve it. But let's also resolve to not kick the can down the road another year.
Yeah. Shelley, okay.
I have somewhat of a kind
Yes,
of different
I'm fine, Bob.
opinion. If this bill is for services already rendered, I don't think we can't pay it. But I think we need to make it clear if we're not going to pay it anymore, or we're not going to pay it until we have additional conversations. I have a hard time, if it's for services already rendered and we told them previously we were going to pay it. I
think we did that last year and not this year. I think last year we suffered through paying it, even though it was questionable. And, there's been no resolution.
I agree with that.
I don't know how you continue to say, okay, we're going to pay you because the service is rendered, and wait another year. And then next year we're having the same conversation. So I believe that we just don't send the payment. And maybe that'll get people to actually have a conversation and pick up talks again. I know that they don't have a county administrator yet, but, that doesn't mean that they don't have financial people and county commissioners who can help to make a decision.
And in some defense of the county, as I said, we were making very good progress, and I think that if we could have continued in a non-pandemic world, we would have come to a resolution to this. That would have worked for everybody. It was just the fact that we had to switch gears, 180 degrees, and try to deal with a pandemic, and this kind of got put on the back burner. So you are correct. This was said last year that we would not pay this until we had some sort of an agreement. I feel we would have gotten there, and Michelle can, say yay or nay if she agrees to that. But because of the pandemic, we didn't. So that would be my only defense there.
And just one further thing to add as a comment. It is a different world. I'm sure the county's going to feel the same way we are. They're in the same crunch. And I just don't want us to stop and revisit all this intent. But I do concur with Councilmember Emily, because I know what we said verbally, but I know what we approved. And I think that the best way to move forward would be to go ahead and pay fiscal year 20, because we're already in June, but pass a resolution that literally says this is it without an agreement. But there needs to be follow-up written documentation sent to the county and signed, probably by our mayor and council, that just says, unless there is a written agreement and a new negotiation or something in place, this will not continue.
What if we pay half, with the second half contingent upon an agreement being reached?
What if we pay a quarter?
I think once you make any payment, an attorney's gonna tell you you're already, admitting that you have some type of obligation
Well, there you go. Then we don't send the payment.
there.
I don't want to send the payment either, but I just feel like if it's for services already rendered and something we already agreed on, that we can't not. But I think Michelle is right. It needs to be absolutely clear that, this is it until we have further conversations and come up with an agreement in writing.
Why don't we, since it's already June, why don't we send over some kind of documentation that I can sign that, that says payment will be coming, after July 1 for fiscal year 20. And, we need to have some kind of resolution before we even consider signing for fiscal year 21. At least give them a couple weeks to digest it and maybe say, yeah, you're right. We need to put together, a document that makes sense and everybody can sign on to. Okay. I mean, unless you, it's up to you guys.
My only question is when Emily says if we made an agreement to pay, then we should pay. My only question is, will we make such an agreement?
No, I don't think we did.
Either do I.
Did we when we passed the resolution or not? I was under the understanding that when we passed the resolution last year, that was an agreement to pay.
It was agreeing to pay last year.
That was agreement to pay FY19.
Yeah. Let's put together.
So then services, yeah, so then services haven't been rendered, right? Is that what we're technically getting at?
No, we pay in arrears. So what was paid in June of 2019 was for the previous 12 months.
Right, was for 19.
Right. So this invoice now is for July 1st, 2019 through June 30, 2020.
I understand. Okay. So again, let's put together a correspondence that says, we have to have resolution of this before, before we send this year's payment, 2020's payment.
Right.
I mean, they can put it together, if they want $405,000, damn if they can't do it fast.
I agree.
I agree.
I agree with that.
Okay, that's what we're doing.
I agree, but I think we can't look at this one issue as a single issue. I think that this has to be an entire topic of public safety and tax differential. I don't think we can just say, hey, this is about the 911 center, because realistically, this is not just about the 911 center. This is about a whole deal of things. And I don't think we should put this one issue and then say, okay, we're done. I think we need to look at the bigger picture.
And I think
that's how we had approached it last year. And that's the way I agree we should approach it from here on out.
I agree with you anyway.
Okay. Let's put together on this.
I'm sorry, Mr. Mayor, just a follow-up question. So are we saying we're gonna draft this language, we're not gonna pay fiscal year 20, and we're gonna say unless we have a resolution or agreement? So are we saying that if we draft an agreement that says the city of Hagerstown is gonna pay $405,000 indefinitely, is that what we're saying we're going to agree to do if it's presented to us in writing? Because that's gonna be the question.
No. What I believe needs to be done is that it needs to make sense. We don't have the same amount of people at the 911 center from the city of Hagerstown that we had 10 years ago. Part of that is going to be, county people, dispatch people to the city. Okay. City people pay county taxes that go to the 911 center, and we pay $405,000 for people that to fund county people. So, so again, as Emily points out, and others have, we're being double taxed all over again at this point. So I think we need to put together the language that says, listen, until there was a resolution to this that makes economic sense and you know, and the numbers make sense, then we're not going to pay 2020's bill. We told you a year ago we're going to do that.
And I think we need to put in the other things that are unfair regarding public safety, like our training center that is used, that we are solely responsible for keeping up to date and everything else. I mean, there's so many issues that all get lumped into this, and I think they need to be very clearly outlined to make our argument for us.
I don't think we add those at this point. I think we focus on this problem first and, you know, let staff work on the issues of other tax differential type of things like our training center and, you know, fire departments crossing lines and things like that.
But for how long?
Well, I would certainly think that this would get the ball started rolling, period.
The county did include in their budget, at first it was in fiscal year 21, and after they made their initial cuts, they moved it to fiscal year 22 to provide the city $500,000 as a contribution towards massive renovation out of our fire training tower. So I just want to point out that it is still in their budget, but it did get deferred to another fiscal year.
Till next fiscal year. 22. Yeah. Okay. All right. Scott, we can put together the language and run it by everybody. Okay. All right, City Administrator, any further comments?
Yes, just two of them, Mayor. Want to remind the public and everyone that this Friday will be Imagine Hagerstown virtual. Friday evening from 6 to 7:30. It'll be on YouTube, Facebook, and the cable channel 25. Performers are very familiar to all of us, I think. Corinza Gray, Lana Spence, and the Men of Leisure. And the first time that I know that we've been able to see him in a Hagerstown venue is Funkstown native Josh Morningstar. So an up and coming country recording artist that we're going to hear more about. So would encourage the public to tune in 6 to 7:30 Friday night. It's before DJ Sidekick starts, so it's a good lead in right into the Friday night retro of DJ Sidekick. Lastly, we did get a somewhat of confirmation that the state fire marshal will be approving our fireworks display for July 4th. So we are excited to continue the planning to do that. As far as how we are going to manage that, whether we're going to let people in the park, whether we're just going to ask people to hang out around the street, we're not sure. Hopefully Wednesday, the governor will provide us some more information. But good news is we are still a go for fireworks on the 4th of July. That's it for me, Mayor.
Austin.
I just wanted to thank everybody. I went down to the rallying point at Fairgrounds for the protest march, and everybody was so well behaved and very, very moving tribute to trying to peacefully change things that need to be changed in the country. So I commend everybody that participated in that, and it was a good I think a good selling point for our city that we can peacefully protest things and not destroy things.
Go ahead and mute yourself, Shelley.
While I am very pleased that we issued a proclamation today, I am hopeful and would strongly request that we continue conversations together to figure out what preventative measures that we can take and how we can be proactive in our own community. I think that it's important that we as a city understand where we need to improve, what we need to stop doing or start doing. And I think that bringing individuals to the table that can speak better than what we can is very important. So while the proclamation is important, I think that we need to continue taking action. It can't be just protests and pieces of paper that are hung in the city's different departments. So, and I applaud everyone for coming together and being able to write that and to, make a statement, although it was a little bit overdue. But I'm very proud to be a part of that. That's it.
Lou.
Thank you, Bob. I would agree with everything that Austin and Shelley have said. It was a little late, but candidly, that's only because we haven't had a public meeting since all of this happened. And I tried to convey that to many people who contacted me and wanted to know if the city was going to come out with a statement. I think it was a very appropriate statement. And I'm very glad that it got signed by everyone.
Emily.
So I want to reiterate pretty much everything that's been said. I was really proud of our town over the last 2 weeks, the display. Our youth, they're going to save us, man. How beautiful is that? A bunch of teenagers put together what happened at the fairgrounds and 600 people showed up. Just incredibly beautiful. I think Shelley's right. We need to continue these conversations. It's unfortunate that such terrible events had to take place for us all as a country to speak up and say Black Lives Matter. We need to make sure we're being culturally inclusive, especially in the city. So I hope this is a wake-up call for everyone that we need to continue this dialogue. I know there have been people reaching out asking about different displays like painting the streets or street names or different things that have been done around the country. And I think having difficult conversations with government, not just elected officials, but within our own city hall and everywhere else is really important. So I applaud everyone for speaking out and standing up for what is right. And especially those young people that came out in full force to just say enough. It's been really beautiful to watch.
Kristen.
I don't have anything this evening, Mayor.
All right, thank you very much. Well, it's great news that the governor is going to allow us to have fireworks on the 4th of July. I think people need a little bit of good in their life, and I believe that adds to it. So hopefully, again, that he comes out and surprises us tomorrow with allowing us to move a little bit forward. I know that I would appreciate that, and the business people that I talked to would. So thank you all very much. Talk to you next week.